This episode of Future Construct is supported by Applied Software. We would like to thank them so much for supporting us. Applied Software is really on a mission to transform industries. They empower their clients and champion innovation with real-world expert consultants. So to reach them, you go to asti.com, that's ASTI.com, and please tell them that we at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. Thanks so much. Hi, welcome to Future Construct. I'm your host, Amy Peck. I am so excited for today's guest. It's a good friend of mine, Elizabeth Barron. So Elizabeth spent 30 years at Ford leading their immersive realities division, and now she's at Unity Technologies, which is the game engine that powers many of the games that you play, but also powers immersive experiences. Welcome, Elizabeth. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's so great to be here. How are you, Amy?
I am good. I'm, this sort of Groundhog Day, day in and day out. But but otherwise, I think I've got this all down now. My whole working from home scenario. How about you?
Yeah, exactly. It's I'm always going to be working from home, so it'll be this way forever. But I do miss the travel. That's
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
difference. It's like actual face-to-face meetings on occasion is, I'm just missing that.
I know. I think the last time we saw each other live might have been in Madrid, maybe.
That's right.
That
Yeah,
was too
it's
long
just too
ago. All right,
long.
we have to fix that. Hopefully 2021. So you have we have so much to cover. We have such great experience. But let's actually start with where you are today at Unity. But I definitely want to talk about your former role as well. So why don't you talk a little bit about how you came to Unity?
Yeah, sure. So so I started my career way back in the day as a programmer for a CAD tool at Ford Motor Company. And so I worked at Ford for just over 30 years, and I never worked on a car or a truck. So my whole career at Ford was in technology and visualization, so writing CAD code and migrating toward virtual reality. So back in, I think it was in 2004, I went to a committee and actually became Ford's first virtual reality technical specialist. And I started working on the tech in 99. So I like way back, right? This is
That's OG.
way
That's true VR OG.
true. Yeah, exactly. It's like a long and deep roots. And it's funny because the first implementation of VR uh, used magnetic motion tracking, which is problematic because cars have a fair amount of metal in them. So we actually created this virtual or this physical vehicle, like this property, so you could get in and like hold the steering wheel and have gas and brake, but it was all made out of oak and mahogany. It was so awesome. But the goal for me was really about what this tech could do, how unique it was as a communication tool, and how to bring that into a very large, extremely diverse in thought and in personality and in function as Ford Motor Company. So that was like a very large organization with a lot of personalities, a lot of opinions, and a lot of ways of working. So trying to learn what people are doing, where I could help, what the technology could do, and why, is how I spent most of my career. And so by the end, when I left, the immersive realities are part of product development. Even in times of COVID, it's considered essential tech, and it's been used throughout, even with the headset. And they're really doing great with using it as a communication paradigm for cross-functional communication. And yeah, so that's my career at Ford. And then I moved over to Unity, and I'm like super excited to be there because one thing my experience at Ford taught me is the value of platform and pipeline to put together a way to visually communicate and then smartly communicate. And so Unity's any platform, any cloud, any user strategy is like ideal to bring cross-functional communication and visual communication and smart communication that uses predictive analytics to give you the right information you need when you need it. It was just a match made in heaven for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I think that, the general perception is game engines, yes, maybe use it for training and, because you have these branching narratives and there's a lot of similarity between games and training. But what people forget is that, game engines and game developers in particular are really, really strong with analytics. Like that's why they're pushing updates. They're looking at how the user is experiencing anything within the environment, and then they're updating. So let's dig in a little bit more on that, because I think that's an important piece for people to understand, is really what are some of the ways that, game engines are valuable within, which is sort of endless, but within the enterprise construct.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you just look purely at game technology, like you said, well, maybe not. But then if I would think about the gamification of discovery and of engineering and of design, and how important is storytelling now, because it's storytelling is this huge initiative in every client, because they want to tell the story of a product's development. They want to tell the story of how somebody will use a product and interact with it. They want to understand spatially, visually, immersively how they're relating to their data. And so Unity is like this, it's this natural platform that allows companies to realize that that personal connection with the thing that they're developing, designing, and engineering. And that's new, because the flat screen review, like rolling, tumbling a model on a screen and kind of looking at some CAD data and doing some measurements, is kind of going from Excel to a flat screen review, 2.5D, 3D, but then to get real-time 3D and actually be able to come together, interact with it, and then be able to pass along your learnings to somebody else and create stories that you can share. And you can share them on any device. So an engineer can get immersed in something and maybe create an app that they send to an executive who views it on a tablet, or gets immersed in it with their phone and through cardboard type or whatever it is. It's really great to see the democratization of that type of learning and discovery in product development and manufacturing. So yeah, it goes way beyond like immersive training scenarios.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because that seems to be how Unity kind of found its lane early on, was that kind of interoperability, and you sort of build it once and you're able to push to kind of all these different factions now, and including headset, right? So WebXR, headset, mobile, whatever it is. So I think that's been a very important piece of their evolution. I would like to thank the team at Applied Software for supporting this episode of the Future Construct podcast. With solutions for really any modern project, Applied Software is on a mission to transform industries by empowering their clients and being the champions of innovation with real-world expert consultants. They have a comprehensive array of solutions for AEC, MEP, and manufacturing with a singular focus, helping you achieve higher performance. So with software, training, support, consulting, and custom development, Applied Software has you covered for all of your workflow needs. And BIM Designs is proud to be a client and partner of Applied Software. So you can reach them at asti.com, it's ASTI.com, and please let them know that we here at Future Construct and BIM Designs sent you. So, given your experience, it's always a challenge for large companies to really innovate at scale, right? And there's often these little factions here and there, kind of ferreting away in their individual silos. So how can companies today really start to leverage technology and sort of change the way that they're thinking about doing things?
Well, it's interesting because most of the adoption that I've seen has come um, like born out of necessity.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think we're in one of these times right now where, this the Zoom paradigm is the normal. And in my home office here, I have a VR set up, and headsets are being sent to engineers and designers all around companies to use in their home during these times. And now there's a need for collaboration and sharing, and actually doing what you would have done if you went to the office every day, but being distributed, and but coming together, like being there here.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and so I think it's interesting because you asked what companies can do, and I think what they can do is assess the technology, respect the culture, and then lead by example. So, I mean, that's like the bare, like the simplest way I could say it. And it's way easier said than done. Because I think the cultural aspects of how people interact in any one company is a huge motivator or disincentive, just depending on how people are understanding each other. Because one of the things about technology is it can point out flaws that people aren't ready to deal with yet. So what do you do if you go to this meeting and like you're responsible for the parts on like the rocker underneath the vehicle, and it's okay in the front end and you're having a front end review, but some executive comes in and goes to the back end and it doesn't quite fit. And now like like this technology is terrible because now I'm not ready to talk about that. We were supposed to talk about this. So it exposes the chinks in the armor of the state of the product. And so the other part of adoption is executive sponsorship, and a willingness to understand and like kind of figure out culturally, like, okay, we're working on this, we found this, but I'm not going to beat that person up because this thing doesn't fit over here. And I think that's part of it too, is it's there's this cultural aspect that, and then there's this leadership aspect where these senior leaders have in general really embraced the tech. And when it percolates down and then bubbles up, I think there's a lot of goodness in that.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting because it is, often sort of, top down and bottom up, right? There's always kind of one person who lives in R&D or IT who's like the champion, but it's really up to leadership to be open to that level of change. I mean, I think one of the first things that we insist upon is we try and get as many, executives, C-level executives in headsets, actually, when we're looking at these kinds of projects. So, in looking where we are today, and, as everyone is saying, of course, everything has changed, but, I think this is a very big opportunity to, I think companies are, very focused on how do we do what we're doing today better and faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
But are there completely different ways of doing things that are being sort of forced now? We're sort of to kind of go down different roads, which isn't normally the way companies like to innovate, but maybe it's the best thing
Yeah.
for these innovation hubs.
Exactly. And what's interesting about tech is one of the things I learned, which I learned by doing, and it wasn't an insight I had by, kind of thinking through things, is that the latest tech isn't necessarily the best thing for a company at that time. And what is the best thing is a stable system. And I think there's all this like FOMO type attitude. You know, I'm missing out of this new tech, and I need to run to it. And someone would come to me and say, well, there's this new device, the 2.0 version. Why are you still using the 1.0 version? And you're so yesterday, Elizabeth. But that may be true, but there's goodness in stability. And stability is really important to provide a known way of working. And I think it's a huge balance in creating, even like in these home environments, like how do you create a stable system that one person can interact with another and have a really great, smart discovery session with the best tech that's the most robust. And I think that's another thing that it's not really considered for all of its merits. And an example would be all the tech that's still in use at Ford in the 5 lab. It's somewhat yestertech with you know, some of the mocap, but it's still real-time ray tracing and 4K, and it's still got like a lot of goodness and a lot of stability, and it just works and works. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that is as you know, I think everyone's been challenged with Wi-Fi dropping out, and I just did a talk where I had the slide where, you know, we've kind of gone from, you know, can you hear me now to you're on mute. Like that's like the saying, like we're all like our lips are moving and nothing's coming out. So yeah, I think that's right. It's like let's make sure that the tech actually that we have actually works.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I was actually in a Zoom meeting the other day, and I look at this guy and just start laughing, and his shirt says "You're on mute." Like, oh gosh,
Like I'm completely gonna steal that now. Yeah, that's my new motto. And actually, I kind of wish I had that mute function when my children were young, and you know,
exactly.
that would have been useful. But you know, there is something really nice too on a personal level. And I'd like to hear your journey of this. You know, working from home and also just kind of getting some of our lives back, and how that you see that impacting the workforce moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think we'll reach a really ideal point, because I think before COVID hit, if you asked people, would you want to work from home? Lots of people would say, oh, that sounds great because I won't have to go in, I won't have to travel. And now people are thinking, well, it's good for the most part, but I really miss my colleagues and I wish I could do this or that. And so I think a lot of companies are reinventing what it means to communicate and what it means to work in teams. And that's one of the exciting things about Unity, because it's really a really good platform for multi-dimensional communications. But these new ways of working might be that you come into the office after you reserve a desk for yourself, and you don't have your desk with your pictures of your kids hanging out in your own space with all your own stuff, but you just go in and meet with some people and go away and come back the next day or do whatever. And the virtual part of it is really exciting because we have these ways of collaborating like we are right now, but there's also a fair amount of immersive tech that we can now take advantage of and still get discovery from. And then as the technology moves on, and as we get to more instances of edge computing, and we start looking at how 5G is coming everywhere, it's going to be really great. And I think we'll find a way to personally connect and then virtually connect as well, and find a really good working relationship between those models.
Yeah, so that's also really interesting too. This the headsets too are sort of enabling us to, they're getting lighter, they're getting smaller. Amazon's just releasing now their, Alexa frames, right? So voice controlled with spatial audio. And then we're going to have Facebook and Apple in the next couple of years kind of coming out with their AR glasses. How do you see some of that technology kind of moving in terms of just communication? Because you bring up a really good point. That's what we need to find a way to replicate, is that being together and those water cooler moments that we don't get now and we can't really recreate on Zoom.
Right, right. I see. It's interesting because a lot of AR, MR type initiatives that are going on, I think we still need an obviously an element of the physical world. So I see them actually less helpful in a lot of ways in a home office situation, and much more helpful in an area where there are prototypes or I'm talking purely about product development and not marketing, because marketing
Mm-hmm.
hugely beneficial everywhere. But for
Yeah.
when you're making something and you're producing, a vehicle or a tractor or a aircraft, the AR tech together with a physical model or some part of it is just fantastic. And that type of workflow where you can just grab like something that's as light and airy as my glasses and then see a change on property, that's just fantastic. Or put on simple glasses and look at all of the manufacturing variation that you could possibly produce, and then understand what's good and bad by physically looking at a vehicle and then looking at how it can change. Like that, I think all of these light and specific ways of interacting in an immersive space are just going to explode as the wearable becomes not only lighter and easier to just basically get in the world and get your data, but also as we're using technologies where we're rendering in the cloud, putting it on device, on-prem in a secure location in a facility that has amazing visual quality. So, high dynamic range imagery on your device. But for
Yeah.
home, I still think immersive is the primary way that we can, just continue to collaborate and share. Because especially if you're designing product, the product is the star of the show. That's the thing you're focusing on. You don't necessarily need, I don't need a avatar Elizabeth or an avatar Amy to talk to when I'm looking at like the interior of a cabin configuration for an aircraft. Like we just need to be in that system and understand where it is and whatever we're studying, and that's what we're focusing on, not necessarily us seeing each other. So the immersive space and the virtual space is really fantastic for that.
Yeah. And you said something that I think is a really great point too, which is that, it can be just a lightweight use case. Like we don't have to invent these complicated ways to leverage the technology, right? You put them on, you need to see overlays or 20 different variations of the car or the space or whatever it happens to be. And then you kind of go about your day. Do you think though that those who maybe now have a little bit of reticence going into, let's say, a full headset, that perhaps wearables are going to be that good first step to get people to understand like what it is to have these kind of digital overlays? Or do you think they're so different and it's like one isn't necessarily going to impact the other?
Well, I guess I think it's both. if I can muddy the water that way, because I think that in some cases the technology is so distinct that there's a lot of crossover. But the other hand, it is a continuum and a spectrum of use, and so there are ways in which using AR and being familiar with how it works and what you get out of it will give somebody a comfort level to go into VR or vice versa, so that there's more of a just a ease of entry into other forms of similar technology. Um, and I can't express enough how important all of these individual use cases are to build up a suite of tools. Like it's like turning up the page in the book. Like if you're going to read War and Peace and it's this thick, and every page you think, I'm only this far. But actually, if you just keep turning the pages, it's true for the tech. Every use case is another way that the enterprise is understanding and doing things before they could do them prior. And then they learn another thing, and then they put that in, and then they turn the page, and then somebody else hears about it, and then the collaboration grows and it blossoms. So I think that's really important to think about, like the specific things that people do, and then think about those specific things in the broader context of who is affected by the specific things that are done, and then what the technology can do, and then how it can help solve like a subset of somebody's problems, and how many other people are affected in a positive way by that.
I love that. I think that's a great way of looking at it. And it is true. We kind of need to get to that tipping point where we have enough users instead of just the early adopters, who are using technology to say, oh, wouldn't it be great if ... And then that's how we really start to see, this evolution arc with the technology. So I'm going to ask you the question that I ask absolutely everyone. And this is just, for you personally. So if you could create your dream, gadget of the future, let's say, 20, 30 years from now, what would it be and what would it do?
Oh my gosh, that is just such a tough question. My gadget of the future, I would, I love to be out in the natural world. And I love being with my family and all that good stuff. And I think a really cool gadget would be really around putting yourself in an immersive environment with familiar, like all of the senses, like being able to, I don't know what that gadget would physically be that I would be in, but the thing I'm getting at is that like spatial sound and smells and airflow. So I would create a gadget that would allow me to get all of the senses of a virtual environment, and then be able to share that with somebody. So we're very concentrated on visually what we see in immersive spaces and how good it looks, but I want all of the senses so that I get the feeling of what it's like to be connected with somebody virtually.
I love that. So you've got the sights, the sounds, the smells. And actually, I just saw that somebody's working on being able to taste in VR.
Exactly.
So they're tackling the senses one at a time. Well, I absolutely love that. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us today. As always, you are filled with insights, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me, Amy. It's always a pleasure to get together and chat. It just feels so natural and time flies.
Great. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.